Hydrite.
Yes. Okay, you can start.
I'm Jonathan Gual, I'm an accounting and entrepreneurship major.
Curtis Lush, computer engineer.
Cayman Wyland, computer engineer.
And I'm Max Lavin, I'm an entrepreneurship major.
And we are Hydrite, the future of smart home watering. Our product will aim to help homeowners in keeping their garden watered while saving thousands of gallons each watering season.
Malfunction.
So the average American household uses 320 gallons of water each day. 30% of that is outdoor water usage, which equates to about 9 billion gallons of water used every day in the United States. 50% of that is wasted due to inefficient irrigation, runoff, overwatering, and evaporation, which equates to about 4.5 billion gallons of water wasted every day. Our product hopes to save 30% of that, which equates to about 1,000 gallons of water per household, which can fill up a 10-person hot tub each month.
So when we started investigating drought, we started realizing right down to the consumer level how much waste there was. How often have you been walking down the street and seen something like this, seen an irrigation system just wasting water going down the road? What we started to realize is that your current watering systems, they just don't know. So my neighbor, I watch him, he goes out, he waters his lawn and garden by hand, and his wife calls him, and he ends up talking to her for 5 minutes. So he went to water for 10, he ended up watering for 15. Those 5 extra minutes, he wasted 65 gallons of water. And based off that 10 minutes, that was a 10-minute assumption of what he thought his lawn needed. So what if we could make your current system smarter? What if we could actively check the weather and make sure that if it's going to rain, that we're not going to be watering? What if your current system can not only know when to fertilize, but could fertilize for you? I introduced to you Hydrite, the future of smart home watering. Just like Nest revolutionized the way that people heat their homes, Hydrite is going to change the way you garden. So we came down to the design process. We knew that it had to have a sensor, and we knew that it had to control the water. So we bring you version 1. As you can see there, it controls the flow of the water and has the sensor in the bottom. We started realizing one of the big issues was that we didn't know that if the system that they were plugging in, whether it was a sprinkler, we didn't know if it was actually going to be near the sensor and we were getting the right analytics. So we bring you version 2, as you can see there. So now the watering was actually coming out of the unit and we were getting active readings from the measurements. We also introduced the interchangeable flow adapter. So this ring on the top, which is changeable for different rings for different distances and different watering patterns. But we started realizing that we took away that ability for people to have multiple units in a row or to attach a drip irrigation system or a professional or a bigger watering system. So we bring you version 3, which is our current system. You can see it's got the pass-through from version 1, so they're able to attach a high-powered sprinkler or a drip irrigation, but it's also watering out of the top, just like the second version did, so we know we're getting the right readings. And then with us today, we've actually got a mock-up. It's about an 80% scale of what our current system is going to look like, version 1.
So as you can see up on the screen and on the table in front of you, we have our functioning prototype. It consists of a microprocessor, sensing equipment, water actuation, and a battery. So the microprocessor is the brain of Hydrite. We chose an Arduino to start off with to model our prototype because it's open source, it's reliable, and there's a lot of attachments such as Wi-Fi. In the future, we might move to something like this, like you see on the screen, which is a Spark core, and that's because it has an onboard Wi-Fi and it has expandability to extend to 2G or 3G networks, and it has a smaller form factor. So we chose the sensing modules that we did because they're cost-effective, they're accurate, and they help us make informed decisions. The metrics that they're giving us are soil moisture, air temperature, and air humidity, which helps us estimate loss due to evaporation, and also light intensity, so we know what time of day it is, whether it's a mainly light garden or shade garden, and we can make decisions based off that. The water is controlled by a solenoid valve, and that connects to standard garden hose thread and can handle the average pressure that comes out of that, which is between 40 and 70 psi. Right now, we are just using a battery in the prototype, but through further testing, we'll be able to get the proper ratio between battery size and the solar panel to get you the most battery life possible.
All right, so in terms of the total market, in 2013, the sales of gardening supplies and anything in that market totaled $3.5 billion. That was a 40% increase over the previous 5 years, which shows a cultural change within our country. We always hear about organic farming, organic growing, and clearly people are starting to move to that. People want non-GMO, they want to know where it's coming from, and they want it to be as clean and as pristine as possible. So that 42 million, that only encompasses those who do food gardening. That has no bearing on people who actually who garden flowers as well. So now if we go to our short-term marketing plan, one big thing for us in terms of making sure that our product's viable is to get into the consumer's hands. We want to, through community gardens and small residential gardening communities, we want to give Hydrite to them. So not only we can aggregate the data that we need to pass on to our consumers for proper gardening information, but we also get to find out how viable and how valid our product truly is. By giving it to these communities, we get first-hand feedback from our consumers, telling us what they like, what they don't like, what they want more of, and how to make our user interface as intuitive and as easy to use as possible. So now if we go to our long-term marketing plan, down the road we really want to have ties with manufacturing, whether it's domestic or abroad, whatever is most cost-effective to reduce our costs. And through that, we'll be able to mass-produce our product, hopefully get shelf space with home goods stores, get in the home goods network, hopefully be in Home Depot and Lowe's and different home goods stores like that, as well as being able to have a modular breakdown of a product, which will allow us to go into the lawn watering market, as well as being able to take our brain out, like as Cayman was talking about, being able to integrate that into current irrigation systems.
So what will this cost to get one of these units inside your own home? We predict a sales price of about $120 per unit, $85 wholesale cost, which gives the retailers about a 30% margin to play with. It will be at $45 per unit cost for the first fiscal year, and then second and third years we predict it to drop down to about $35 per unit once we get our manufacturing ties and the cost of components goes down. Our expenses, we predict, are about $10,000 for advertising, travel, legal, and web design. App development is predicted around $5,000, and then our R&D is our major one at $200,000, which is mainly for analytical software development, the algorithms, the unit development, and the trials for the community gardens, like Max was saying. So here we have a three-year pro forma for Hydrite. The first fiscal year, we predict about 3,000 pre-order sales, which we will try to ship out in the second fiscal year. And the second fiscal year, hopefully we'll have ties with the retailers and Home Depot, large big box stores. So that's why our sales drastically increase. And this remains consistent with the $45 production cost for the first year and $35 for the second year. And the expenses increase due to mainly salary increases, payroll, and advertising. So third year, as you can see, we plan to break even. This is based on an average selling price of about $94 per unit, which gives us, which is based on 75% of our sales going to wholesalers and then 25% from our website sales. And this also remains consistent with the $120 unit selling price that we described earlier.
So we're getting all these amazing analytics, but the biggest part is how are we going to get them to you? Because they're pointless if we can't get them to you in the easiest way possible. So we'd be using something like the Amazon Web Service or the Google Cloud Platform. We'd be integrating that in with the application. As you can see here, so again, we talk about the two different users, the one that just wants to integrate, the one that just wants to take it out of the box, they want to plug it in, it just needs to work. But then you've got that second user that wants to go in, they want to customize. So you can see they're going in and setting up a zone. So we've been talking with the agricultural department at UNH, and so when you set up a zone, you'll be able to actually say what kind of plants are in it, and so we actually know what the ideal moisture is to promote maximum growth out of your garden. So as we're looking forward, because we need to be looking forward and making enhancements, so obviously we talked about Nest earlier, so having an intuitive user interface, it needs to look good, it needs to represent exactly what we're trying to do. And then moving forward with the modular plugins that we talked about, so having the fertilizer plugin, and from there just being able to add on more and more features without having to buy all new systems. We can't start looking into this months from now, weeks from now, or even days from now. Drought is here. If you guys have turned on the news, California is getting hit pretty hard right now. And we need to start thinking forward. We need to think right. We need to hydrate. Thank you.
So, I have a question, a couple of questions. So how did you determine that this unit will save 30%, I mean not 50% and not 40%?
It's generally just through testing. Obviously, it was hard with how long the snow lasted here for us to get a really good test. To nail down exact numbers, we're going to have to do obviously longer testing. Now that we have some ground to actually plant the thing in and start watering, we're going to be able to get better analytics moving forward.
And the technology, is it patentable? Is there what's the secret sauce that's going to say, you know?
So there's bits and pieces of it. Obviously now there's a lot of arguments going on with whether software is patentable or not. Right now it's not really. One of the big ones is the the flow adapter on the top. That's definitely a patentable piece. One of the big things that we started noticing is that you had to be able to remove things. So if you have hard water, they can get clogged up. So being able to remove the nozzles is definitely helpful. Also the battery being removable is another thing that, so that you don't have to replace the unit after the battery dies. But the big one is the flow adapter for our patentability.
Competition?
So we currently have one competitor in the market. They are differentiated. They're two separate units. It's a sensor and a valve. And their retail price is $160, so we would try penetration pricing, which would undercut them by about 25%. And they do not have the sprinkler head in one. We wanted to make this as easy as possible to use, plug-and-play design, just put it in the ground, screw it in. You have a sprinkler head that does everything that our competitor would do all in one.
The business proposition to a customer, are you going to save them money, or is it a feel-good thing that you're offering them? At a price of $120, will that water a big enough area, big enough saving that they'll actually save money on water, or no?
Great question, Max.
So the monetary savings are actually pretty minimal. The cost per gallon is not a significant price. But when you put it in the scheme of things, you get 10 people using Hydrite in your neighborhood, and let's say our estimates are correct that you're saving 1,000 gallons a month. I mean, as a community, you're now saving 10,000 gallons a month, and what you can do with that is, I mean, just saying that you're saving that much, it's definitely a peace of mind thing, and definitely something for the consumer. But then you go out to the West Coast, and in California, people are getting fined $500 for watering at the wrong time of the day or using too much water in one instance. And let's say we could bring this to municipalities and say, if we get your citizens are using our product, it means they're watering intelligently, they're watering properly. Is there a way they could get a tax break on this or have a reduced chance of fine or something like that?
Just another question, if I could. Have you looked at connecting this or selling this as a technology to some of the people that sell lawn watering systems? I have like a 30-zone system in my house, and we paid a lot of money for it. This sounds like it would be a much better solution than right now running it for 20 minutes in this zone in 5 minutes.
Yeah, so that's one of the things we talked about. So we talk about it as the brain, the technology behind it, the algorithms, the sensing. So you look at the professional irrigation systems, and they run off a timer, and that's about it. There's no integration. So we're developing moving forward at actually just removing the technology from it. So you would have a little sensor that you would place in your garden the same way. So we get the same analytics and sensing, but then you would have something that actually plugs into your pre-existing system to control it. And you'd be able to use the same thing, setting up the zones and stuff like that, like they currently do, but you'd be able to customize them, you'd be able to manually override on your phone.
So you only need the one unit, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And that one unit. Now, have you guys thought about, okay, this is like a one-time situation, you pay your 120. Have you thought about doing something where you have more of an ongoing type of cash flow or an annual type of fee for whether it be the upgrades to the software or somehow tie into, more of a ongoing revenue stream than just a one-time revenue stream, like upgrades to the, software? Or have you given any thought to, creating an income stream than just, all right, I sold this to Mike Marsh, and that's it, and I'll have to see the guy. Now you have a customer, you should be thinking about moving a little forward in terms of capturing some sort of additional revenue from that customer than just a one-time thing.
Okay.
Have you thought of that?
Yeah, great question, Jonathan.
Yeah, so the reason we put the pass-through valve in there was so you can expand to different areas. So if you wanted to move from a lawn, expand to a bigger yard, maybe put on a high-powered sprinkler on the end of that, that's one way you can expand through that. It's also the convenience. So if you have a second home, say, that you can't be there once a week or whenever you need to go to water your yard, you can remotely monitor this through your phone, turn it on, turn it off, based on any metrics that you might need. So that would be a way to expand. And then as we were saying, to expand into creating different sensors that would not only work with a integrated system right now, but that would also work with this So if you have a module like this and you attach a high-powered sprinkler through the pass-through valve, you could get just sensors and put them throughout the bigger area of your yard. Once we move into the lawn field, that would provide future cash flow.
Well, he says that it picks up if it's a shade comes in, it'll adjust accordingly. Well, okay, so now you have shade in one part of your lawn, you have sun in another part of your lawn. How does it adjust for that?
Well, that's one of the biggest things is like when we're looking at this, so the one unit covers, our tests are showing about 250 square feet per unit.
Okay.
So again, so it's not a,
So that was my third question.
so it's not a, it's again, it's not a full lawn, but as you mentioned, you have a there's a very intricate irrigation system. They're expensive. They cost about $3,000 to $5,000. They have annual upkeep. And so with something like this, you could buy 2 or 3 of these, which we're going to be working in bulk packaging, and you'd be able to set up so you could have one in the shade, one in the sun. And that's why we had the pass through. We wanted the ability for people to customize and have exactly what they wanted.
Have you thought about filtering, like you were talking about hard water?
Mm-hmm.
About having filters in the unit themselves to accommodate for that?
Yeah. So that's
And then
one
there's
of
one, right? You can buy the filters. You have it's like a
Yeah.
vacuum cleaner, right? You have to buy the filters.
Ongoing.
There you go.
That's what we were talking about. So the modular. So this system we're going with the Arduinos. We wanted everything to be modular. We talked about the fertilizer, and we don't want you to have to rebuy a unit every time.
No.
So for someone to be able to go, and we release this new fertilizer module, so they can go, and that's going to keep our we're going to keep getting sales that way, or something like a filter, or just like everything. We want it to be able to keep growing and adding without having to replace the system every time.
I think it's an excellent idea. Very good.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, what was the original, how did this come about originally, and how did you four get together? Because one, what's the origination of this product? And so,
Max, would you like to talk about
So we participated in the WERC New Mexico competition earlier this semester. So our advisor Jeff Soul brought 3 computer engineers and 3 entrepreneurship students together to compete in this environmental design competition. So we sat down thinking about trying to find an issue that we can not necessarily solve completely, because that's not necessarily reasonable, but an issue that we could have an impact on. And when we were sitting down thinking about it, we found drought and how vast it is in our country. And I mean, the UN is reporting that 30% of the world is going to be affected by moderate to severe drought by 2030. So when we found all these stats and everything, we really found that there was a need for people aren't going to want to be, nowadays people want the easiest thing possible. They want to plug it in, forget about it, right? So we found a way to do that through gardening and lawns, and we think that's a viable solution.
no, and that's why I just was asking the context.
Right.
So maybe someone was actually, in landscaping, or they saw a problem
Yeah.
actively in their own lives. So.
Well, I know we have experience on our team. John's been the guy digging up a lawn and installing a professional irrigation system. And
Yeah, pain in the butt.
Now, can you do this yourself? Is this like self-installed, or
Yeah.
do you have to have someone out to do it for you?
so that's the whole thing. It's the whole do-it-yourself. Go to Home Depot, take it out of the box, and that's why we kind of identified 2 user groups. There's the person that just wants to take it out, plug it in,
Yeah.
let it do its thing. And so in the first week, just like Nest does, so Nest takes about a week to learn your lifestyle, your schedules, your time, and ours will do the exact same. We're going to be able to do different testing to learn the porosity of your soil through different saturation levels, to know the climate, the soil you're in. And then we talked about having an environment. We want it to be a community. And so if someone in your neighborhood has one, when you plug yours in, we've already got the analytics of your neighborhood and your climate, and we're already able to integrate right in.
So, okay. So how much cash do you need before you get cash flow positive? Your burn rate. What's your burn rate? How much cash do you need?
The predicted expenses are about $400,000 for the first couple of years with those unit
Total.
sales.
Total 400.
Yeah, and then it increases because we need to add in a mechanical engineer to work with the circuit boards. We have software and computer engineers that can do most of the work, and then we need to consult some data out for some of the more analytical software
Well, it
creation.
looked like your break even was 3 years, but your cash flow positive, you didn't mention that, so I was just curious of how that.
Cash flow positive would be, we're predicting at the very end of the 3rd year.
In terms of the analytics, why do you need to know anything other than the moisture content of the soil? What else do you get it?
Good question, Cayman?
Yeah, so like we were saying, the moisture of the soil is important, but when you have the other metrics such as the humidity, the light intensity, and the temperature, we can have algorithms like part of the brain that will develop that tell you, okay, well, maybe the soil moisture is this moist at the moment, but it's also 100 degrees and like just full on, like no clouds, 100 degrees, like you can tell maybe it seems like it's at a good moisture level right now, but I should water anyway because that's clearly going to evaporate very soon. And just kind of being smarter about it. Like just so soil moisture alone might not always make the best decision. So combining all those metrics together help us just give us more for our brain, the smartness of the Hydrite. Yeah.
So the thing that bothers me is you keep talking about the drought areas in California. I mean, they just shut down lawn watering. It's not even use this more efficient thing, right? So they're going to say stop watering. It's, nobody's going to be using anything to water if it's a severe drought.
Yeah.
So I get you can save 30%, it's more efficient, but I just wonder, if you're really going to target those drought areas, if that's even a viable market, because they're not going to be watering lawns.
Yeah. John?
Well, the beauty of this product is it works in multiple areas, because we do like to target drought areas, but there's a huge convenience factor part of this. And we've already talked to a bunch of people that live in this area where we have an abundance of water, but just knowing, you're just having the convenience of not, or having a timer, but a smart timer. And as Curtis was saying, I have worked in landscaping. I set up a timed water system for one of my customers after I tore up his yard and did everything. And just to have, for myself, to spend $60 more and get a Hydrite instead of a timer, I'd be able to monitor it from my phone and say, oh, look, it's a little dry right now. I need to turn it on. And instead of having to drive over a half an hour to his property, go outside, water it, wait for it, turn it off, I'd be able to say, oh, water it as much as you think it should be, and then it'll learn over time and just automatically go. So it's not just for the drought areas. It has a much larger consumer market.
Thank you.
What is it that your purported biggest competitor would be the first one, Eden? What would they have to do to knock you out of the game, basically?
They're very new. It's a Kickstarter. They're not even released yet. They were supposed to start. They have pre-orders. They haven't started shipping. They pushed back their shipping. So they themselves are a very small company. Right now, like we said, their product's very different. We changed our model from theirs. Like our original one, we had the pass-through valve and the sensor. But then we reached the issue of having that we don't know if people are actually watering where the sensor is. So the sensor might be getting readings that are totally inaccurate to where you're actually watering. So for them to push us out, not totally sure. I think we're coming in with a better idea, with a better product, and I think they should be worried about us.
How many did they sell in the Kickstarter program?
I believe they had 300,000 in sales and pre-orders.
Wow.
It's the next level of innovation. Like now with the technology and everything that we're able to do, we're able to make everything smart. The whole Internet of Things stance.
So they sold 2,000 units roughly without any advertising other than just throwing a request on Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
I think your numbers are way too low if they would manage to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they're incredibly hard to find on the internet.
You said a piece was patentable, right?
Yep.
You're moving along with that, correct?
Starting the process for doing
Yeah.
patent searches, made sure that there's no.
That's how you keep your product unique.
Yeah.
And it's because any big player could come in and say, well, we can design that in 3 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you guys are smaller, you're quick, more nimble, faster to market, no bureaucracy.
Passionate.
And passionate, right? And the key is to get that cost down. And I think that you guys are already factored that in. But I agree with Mike. I think you did a little light on the numbers there.
In the I guess the agricultural market, is there any science that says if you have just the right amount of water, not too much, not too little, your actual productivity is much higher?
Yeah, so that's the whole thing we talked about, is getting the maximum yield. Like it does actually matter. There is like making sure that you're watering. It's more than just the water levels too. It's the root depths. If you're not watering enough, if a plant has deep roots, then you might not actually be hitting where the water needs to get. So it really is like every plant varies, and that's one of the things we want to be able to take into account, is that we're getting every plant to its ideal moisture level.
Would that make commercial sense if I'm a farmer to use that? Is that actually, because the lawn business, that's basically a feel good. But would it make sense commercially to buy this if I was an actual farmer?
Yeah, I mean,
Food
that's,
sources, yeah.
again, future, like looking forward, future enhancements is something like we talked about taking the brain out of it for professional irrigation systems. I think there's,
There you go. All right,
I guess I'll listen to the sign.
Get a hook.
thank you.
That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.